WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Vision Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the show is We Should Know, Tuesdays 2:30 to 3:30. We appreciate you taking time to look at us or listen to us on WCLN 1170 Radio or Star Vision TV or Star TV, Channel 16. We try to bring you informative educational programs each week. I want to thank Nicole for her introductions for us and for this show each and every week. Also, a very quick shout out to all those folks who called us and emailed us and mentioned the program last week. Stanley Carr, Mr. Stanley Carr up on 701 north of Clinton called me and saw the show we had with the Fussell brothers, Jonathan and David. Thank you for your comments and other folks that are constantly letting us know what they think about the program. We appreciate your comments. Today, an interesting guest we have. You guys probably know this gentleman. Been around for a while, and the only thing I can say, a stellar career as a public servant. It's been a county commissioner, been the board of trustees at the community college, done numerous things in the community. One of the things a lot of folks remember our guest is the superintendent of Sampson County Schools, and this is his going into his 7th term here in the House of Representatives. Dr. Larry Bell.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us, and thank you for taking time. District 21 that you serve, Duplin, Sampson, and Wayne counties. There's a lot going on in the legislature. You've been, again, as I said, outstanding public service basically all your life. You've been a public school teacher. There's a lot of things I'm probably missing that you've been involved in. County commissioner, I don't think I mentioned that. But you've just done a lot of focus on serving the citizens in this state. There's a lot going on in the legislature right now. We see a lot of sound bites from a lot of the major TV channels in Raleigh. In your career as a public servant and with the number of years you served in the House, tell us what's happening now that seems to be so different than the kinds of dialogue and the things you guys are involved in up there over your experience.
Well, right now you have seen some protests. You're talking about like on the Monday night when you have the people coming up. It gives the citizens an opportunity to come up and express themselves. It's led by a representative, Reverend Barber, who, by the way, pastors a church in my district, 21 down in Goldsboro, down on Williams Street. And he has become the president of the NAACP. And some of the issues that we have been talking about are issues that have been very dear to the hearts of people in those areas, especially when it comes to voting regulations and to dealing with the poor, with the Medicaid, Medicare, and all those kinds of things. And so I think they're just expressing their interests and hoping that they would not make so many cuts and things in the budgets.
Representative Bell, when I look at that, and a lot of people see those kinds of things on TV, and they see folks that are actually being arrested and put in restrictive restraints or whatever you want to call the restraints, but they're let off. They're being processed as violating the law as criminals. So how strong, apparently there's a huge passion in resistance for people to be willing to be arrested to stand up for whatever that belief is. Is it one specific thing or one area that folks are really finding concerning to them?
I think they just want to let people know that there is a deep feeling about some of the things going on, and many of them are willing to be arrested just to, not necessarily knowing that they're going to jail to stay a long period of time, but to let them know that it is serious enough for them to be willing to take that kind of, I don't say punishment, but that kind of whatever to be able to let people know that they are concerned. I can remember back in the 60s when that happened, I was a student at that time back at North Carolina A&T when they had the sit-in demonstrations and picket in the Woolworth Crest and all that, and people were arrested for the same kinds of reasons, redressing the grievances. It's part of the Constitution that you have a right to do that if you don't like what's going on.
You mentioned just then. You mentioned Medicaid and Medicare, and you also mentioned people that's less advantaged than other folks. Is that one of the key points right now in where some of the battle lines are being drawn as it relates to the issues that the Democrats look at versus the Republicans look at, and individuals, and there's also folks that cross over in different kinds of ways as you reach these negotiations? Is it built around the services to people that are disadvantaged, and how do we get beyond this impasse?
Well, now, if I knew exactly how to get around it,
yeah, we'd already be through, right?
Yeah. I don't know exactly how to get around it, but I know that is a concern of a lot of people, and it crosses party lines. Mm-hmm. When you start talking about economics, it affects everybody's pocketbooks. We have Democrats who receive Medicaid, and we have Republicans who receive it. Mm-hmm. And if we don't receive it ourselves, you have family members or people that in your communities who are sick and all of that. And when you start hearing them talk about they can't get services, it becomes a concern to everybody. And I think most of those people you see are from the faith-based part of the community, and they are just kind of expressing the concerns of some of the people in their churches and things like that.
And I know you have expressed a genuine concern and sympathy for folks, and I think one of the comments I recall you making on our show previously is that churches and communities need to come together and help folks that are less advantaged and disadvantaged in many ways, and whether it's some kind of physical malady or a handicap, or maybe it's just senior citizens that's reached that point that they're not able to do the things they've done in the past. But when we look at that and we think of the legislature and what's going on, we think about Medicare, we think about health care, and the question now as we look at national health care coming into full effect in the nation, what is North Carolina? What is the reaction of North Carolina and the legislature and the government in general in North Carolina to national health care? This is something apparently we're going to have to deal with, and how does that affect Medicaid?
Politically, I think a lot of people came in with the idea that they call it Obamacare. They did not want that to be passed. Some of them were politicians, and so. But it did pass, and I think some of them have the feeling that they're going to see what they can do to make sure it doesn't work. And so instead of accepting some of the plan where he was going to fund it 100% for 3 years in North Carolina, we rejected that. It was funded for 3 years, and instead we are taking that, having the budget to make up the differences for something that we could have, taken advantage of. And I think, probably just because we didn't want to accept the health care program. And as a result, you got people who are going to hospitals and places like that and can't get their Medicaid. And it's affecting hospitals like Sansom Memorial, where people, I don't know what percentage, but a large portion of them would go based on that. And in a community like ours, we have a lot of we depended on it really to help for patient care. That was some of their insurance, so to speak. They didn't have Blue Cross or whatever, and so the doctors are being hurt by it, the hospitals are being hurt, and so I don't know exactly how we're going to get out of that dilemma. I don't want to see our hospitals closed, and I don't want to see people denying folk health care because they're going to other private doctors.
When we look at that, and we're talking about health care, of course, we've had the insurance commissioner on and talked with him about this some time ago prior to the actual full implementation of the National Health Care Reform Act. When we look at that, can the state disenfranchise itself from the federal government as it relates to health care and move in another direction?
If it does, it's going to hurt.
Is that what we're doing now?
That's kind of what we're doing, and it's hurting the people, because they keep talking about, people keep talking about the government, and we are the government. The people, that's the government. So when you talk about that, you're talking about ourselves. We elect people to go to Washington, D.C. to represent us. It's a representative democracy, and they are supposed to be speaking for us. I'm supposed to be speaking for you in Raleigh, and that's just the way it works. And so when you want to overthrow the government, you're overthrowing everything that we have, basically. And so I think somewhere down the line, you're going to have enough confidence in the people that you send there to say, hey, we think they know what they're doing. If they don't, we'll change it at the next election, but not just hurt people, especially taking away some of the things to make it so difficult for people to live.
When you look at those folks, and when I say that in general, the general population, do you, in your constituency, and I know you move around your district a lot and you talk to a lot of people, you hear from a lot of people, do you sense some form of disenfranchisement from what government is, what the purpose of government is? Folks maybe just don't know what's going on.
I do, and I think that good civics lessons are something that we really need to emphasize and to let people know what government really is and what the function of it is.
And as a background, as an educator, I'm sure that you see there's something somewhere missing to get people not only interested but willing to step up and voice concerns. I mean, maybe not to the level of getting arrested or what have you, but at least voice their concerns about what's going on in government.
That's correct. I think people need to be able to speak out, and I think everybody needs to be educated to the level that they can talk about some of these issues intelligently, reading newspapers and listening to programs like this so that they can get an idea of what's going on and speak about it intelligently.
Well, we're going to take our first break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking to Representative Dr. Larry Bell. Stay with us as we discuss issues here in North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming to you on WCLN 1170 AM. The name of the program is We Should Know. We're talking with Representative Dr. Larry Bell, District 21, Duplin, Sampson, and Wayne counties. And we're talking about issues facing you and the legislature and trying to get a bit of in-depth discussion. Dr. Bell, you serve on a number of committees: the Appropriations Committee, Appropriations Subcommittee on Education, Commerce and Job Development, Commerce and Job Development Subcommittee on Alcohol Beverage Control, the Education Committee, Homeland Security, Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, Regulatory Reform Subcommittees on Local Government, and State Personnel. I don't believe I got all that in, but just saying all those things, that's a huge chunk on those committees. There's a huge chunk of the budget that's kind of sprawled in those committees in some way. When we look at those things that you're involved in and we think about what's happening right now with the budget, is it going anywhere close? Do you see it being anywhere close to where you would like it to be as it relates to some of not only the committees, but I know you're a big proponent of education. Is education getting the service it needs in this budget? And I noticed it's over 50% of the budget.
Yeah, well, whenever you start working on a budget, one of the first things you have to do is think about the base budget that you have and trying to maintain what we have. And when you look at those things, essential things that you have to fund, you have very little left. It's because the only time you can expand it and go into new areas is if you have a surplus. And we haven't had a surplus in a long time. So we have to kind of deal with what we have and try to make adjustments, see where we have some things that are not going very well and make some cuts there and to fund some other things, new things that we have. But basically we just try to maintain what we have been doing for a number of years. And some of the freshmen who come into the legislature have a hard time trying to understand that all the bills that we pass during the year, during the interim period, if it has money expenditure or something on it, you have to consider that. That's going to be a part of your budget. It can increase it. And so you have, usually the appropriation chairs have to tell them right quick, hey, that's going to cause our budget to have an impact on our budget. So you need to think about what you're doing, even if it's something like making an arrest, something like that, changing speed limits, wherever you might catch a group of people who may be committing criminal acts and have to go to jail. It costs us for people to stay in jail.
Everything matters.
Everything matters, and you have to think about that as you go through all these bills. And so, just maintaining what we have would still carry us up there around $20 billion, something like that.
Well, right now we're looking at over $20 billion, and I guess when you get into the billions, a few million here and there mounts up, but over $20 billion. When you look at tax reform and what's going on with tax reform right now, what is one of the things, or several of the things, that concern you the most with the current proposal on the tax reform bill?
Well, I think the thing that would concern me most is that it's whether it's going to be fair for everybody. Going all the way up to the line, and I know we've heard that all the time. It's become political about giving tax breaks to the rich, and on the backs of the poor, and things like that. And so we gave some of the wealthiest people in the state something like 50 million or more tax break right at the top, on only about 23 people. And then you think about this, should they get it, and then all these other people have to suffer down low or whatever, or do we change it around and have fees that everybody has to pay for doing one little thing or another, like fishing at the coast or whatever, that where you didn't have to do that in the past. Put that on everybody, or should you keep the 50 million at the top? Where there's people who wouldn't even miss it if you take it. And so that's the kind of thing we have to look at, and I think that's why you have people protests and everything. They do things that we can't do to bring to raise the consciousness of the people about things like that may be going on.
That piece of the budget on tax reform, and specifically you alluded to something I think that a lot of folks may not know, is under the current tax reform bill, folks that do, for example, service work, whether it's mowing yards or maybe a haircut, whatever it may be, those kinds of things, would there be a tax levied under this tax bill for that service?
On some of it, the only thing I can remember right now that somebody mentioned was something like auto repairs, and I'm not sure whether it's going to go all the way down to the haircut and all of that. It might, but I'm not sure, because it's not really clear to me exactly what is going to be taxed all the way through, and that's one of the horrors of it.
I think it is, and one of the things that folks need to look at is they can pull that up. They can go to NC Legislature, Google that online, pull it up, and read that bill. It's an interesting bill, and let your voice be heard. The concept of where we're at now leads us obviously to those categories when we look at the budget and we think about education. And again, I know that's where your heart is, because you've been a classroom teacher, superintendent, grew up literally, you've told me in the past how you grew up within that system of education and learning. What is the big concerns you have for K-12, K through 12? What's the biggest concern you've got there when you look at the budget and maybe some of the cuts that may be happening? And what does folks that have got grandchildren or children need to be thinking about 4 or 5 years up the road?
I have a concern about class size reduction and all that. I think the lower you can have the class size, the better off the schools are and the better education the kids are going to get. Ideally, you would like to have one-on-one education, a teacher for every child. But we can't have that. But when it comes down to maybe 15 or 18 per teacher, to me, that makes a lot more sense. And when you have to go back up to 25, 26, 27, I know that's going to take away from what that teacher can do in that classroom. Because I taught, and I remember one time having a class with 40 students in there with no assistant. And I can tell you right now, that's tough. It's just tough to maintain order and decorum with 40 adolescents most of the time in a classroom. That's what I had, and I just hate to see our teachers have to go back to something like that. And then it comes to talking about expenditures or spending money on it. I just don't think there's anything that I can think that's hardly any more important than to spend money to have that class size down to maybe 18 at least.
I know you talk to teachers, and again, being a former teacher and being a former superintendent, you obviously talk to your superintendents in your district a lot. As they look at education and we see some of the things happening monetarily, there's a huge cultural shift that we're seeing in education. And some of the teachers have told me, said, look, trying to teach folks that can't speak English is a challenge in my classroom. Is this budget reflecting anything to assist teachers with that? And do we really understand the dynamic of the volume of people that are now in our school system? Some school systems have told me in certain districts 40 to 60% are Latino, and a huge number of those just do not speak English. Talk to us about the impact of that.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous impact. And as a matter of fact, you mentioned that somebody talked to me about that this past week. I was speaking on the floor, and they came and pulled up the statistics for Sampson, Duplin, and Wayne County, and they came and started talking to me about test scores. I said, what about the test scores in this school right here? What are you going to do about that? And I could tell them right off. I said, in that particular school you're talking about, I said there's about 60% Latino in that population. I went to speak at a PTA meeting there, and I said, and I knew that we had that many there. It has changed, made a big change from what it was several years ago. That was over in Warsaw. And then they pulled one in Sampson County, and they talked about, they said African Americans in this particular school here said reading to about 52% level and everything. And so when they pulled the school, I said, I'll guarantee you there's not about 4 or 5 African Americans in the whole school. And they said, I said, pull it up and see. They pulled it up, and there were 5. And I said, I said, I know the schools. I said, you talked about something that I know. And I said, so you're talking about 50%. I said, now, if you were talking about a school that had 3,000 kids, I said, I could be concerned about that. I said, but you're talking about 4 kids and in a whole school. And I said, you're talking about 2 of them. And everything. And I said, so you're going to find situations like that, but that's not anything to condemn what's going on in Sampson County Schools, because you found 2 students in a school that probably was reading below grade level.
Well, and you make a very good point, and Governor McCrory is concerned. Obviously, he's had some recent comments where he's concerned about testing and the number of tests, and basically testing too much. Do you see that happening? Is that a concern, and do we need to pull back from that?
Well, I have told them several times that the reason why we have tests, for the most part, is because the legislature and the powers that be ask us to be accountable. And in order to be accountable for what's going on in the classrooms, you have to find out the levels of the students, their competencies. And the way you do it is by testing. And also, you test to improve instruction. And you find out where the students are. And I mean, the other ones who use them, I think, misuse the data. Teachers don't.
We're going to take our next break, and ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with the Representative Dr. Larry Bell talking about issues facing folks in North Carolina, the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Name of the show is We Should Know. If you're riding down the road listening to us on WCLN 1170 Radio, Hopefully you're not watching us on TV as you're driving down the road. That would not be a good thing. But if you happen to be watching us on TV and you're home or wherever, just pick up the phone, call a neighbor, tell them to tune in. We've got a program they want to talk that we want to talk to you about today and want you to hear. It's because it's talking about your money. It's talking about the budget of the state of North Carolina. It's talking about bills and various kinds of regulations that may or may not be happening in the legislature. I want to give a shout out to Boogie Shoes, Robert Stroud, on Saturday afternoon. The Southern Gospel Hour, Wayne Weeks. Wayne mentions us. We appreciate that, Wayne. And, of course, Tommy the Fly that's down at the radio station now, and the L-Man Nolan Z, and Grandpa Pat. We appreciate all those things. Dr. Bell, thank you again for being here. And it's something that we try to digest, and I think the sheer volume of what's happening in Raleigh is somewhat tough for everybody to choke down and understand. And we briefly talked about a while ago this sense of disenfranchisement that a lot of folks kind of feel separated from their government or what's going on with their government. And oftentimes we see that in voting, people that turn out to vote, or we see it in just misunderstanding what a bill is or what a legislator is doing or how that happens. What do you see as a way that we could move folks closer to and understand better what's going on in their government?
Well, I really think, you mentioned about education. I think education is the key to all of it. I think we should emphasize civics classes, as I said, more in our schools. Anytime that teachers get a chance to teach about our government, they should do that. They should make an effort to visit Raleigh as often as they possibly can with students to see what is going on, and to visit the State House and all of that, and bring in people. From time to time, let them come into the classroom and talk to the students, and let them ask questions about what is going on. Not only from Washington and Raleigh, but locally, your county commissioners and your Board of Education members and city councilmen. All of those, I think, should be a regular part of your classroom work from time to time, and it would not be anything a waste of time. I should make time for people to come in and do those things.
And when you see the spikes on the graph where people's concerns are and folks become agitated, and you see the differences in the chambers, in the legislature, and literally in the communities, you hear folks talk about a lot. One of those issues was voter ID, and is still voter ID. There seems to be a huge divide there, I think, maybe in misunderstanding. What is happening with voter ID, and why this, and I think we might have talked about this before, where there are folks that say, well, we don't need it, others say we do need that. What's the pushback on voter ID, and why is it not a good thing to do?
Well, I think any time that you suppress a person's ability to vote or whatever it is, in America, that's kind of bad. And voter ID is not bad as long as you can give them a lot of have a lot of flexibility. Here in Sampson County, basically we know about everybody, especially different precincts. And I think if somebody's there to say, hey, that is J.W. Simmons, and you got a person there with credibility saying things like that, that ought to be enough if you can't show the ID. But I think it all boils down to the same thing that we talked about before, a lot of immigration and migration and across the United States, where you have people coming into communities where people don't know them, and everything. And so they might call it profiling or whatever, but there's probably should be some way of identifying some people if you don't know. You could let people vote and kind of hold it in question or whatever it is until it can be verified. But I think you shouldn't turn people away. And we just need to have some rules and regulations to make sure that if you go to vote, you can vote. But if we question it, we might have to wait a while. We might not get the results tonight in the news, but we're going to check some of these out.
When you look at the proposal, and a number of folks propose a voter ID card or a picture ID from someone, is that really too much to ask for a person that walks up to vote? And that's a huge step. When we say, well, just one vote, it really doesn't matter. But it does matter, because you're talking a huge number of people that, if, again, over a period of districts where there's hundreds of thousands of people, it can make a huge difference. Is that too much to ask, to have an ID where you just simply present that ID and it verifies who you are?
No, but suppose you don't have it. What about having to turn somebody away from voting for somebody because they didn't have it? There ought to be just as much emphasis placed on what are we going to do to let this person's vote count. So we had a proposal. As a matter of fact, my seatmate had one, said, let's have a camera right there. So that if we have somebody who will come in and say they don't have their voter ID, say, okay, well, you come over here and sit like you do at the driver's license place. We're going to take your photo right now, and we're going to give you a provisional ballot, and we're going to check it out later. So if you check out to be who you say you are, then you'll have it from now on. But but they can still vote. If everything works out. So you got all of the little holes closed in that, I think.
So you would support that if there was a way set up that it could be held as a provisional kind of ballot until verification is done. If that was in place, you would not have a problem with that.
No, we kind of have that now. That's what I was saying. That's where I didn't see where we needed a whole lot of drastic changes. We have that right now, that a person can question if they find, you find out somebody maybe voting you think that's irregular or whatever. You can challenge that vote now. But if it's going to satisfy more people to do more, then I think we need to have some things in place to make sure that everybody gets a chance to vote.
Absolutely.
That's the most important thing that we have in America.
Oh, it's very critical, and it goes back to the very question we're talking about as far as civic lessons and folks understanding how they connect and tie to government. Another issue that has been facing the legislation, I know a lot of folks have told me that's one of the reasons they went to Raleigh, was because they're looking at regulations and cutting and curbing regulations. What are some of the things that concern you about curbing regulations and doing away with regulations? And again, it gets back to the core principles, both in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. As you look at this issue of more business, less government, or more government, less business. There's this kind of dichotomy of thought that occurs there. But curbing regulations is a huge issue right now.
Yeah, we have regulations for a reason. Probably somebody abused them or some things in the past, and so it had to be regulated. Somebody said, well, we need to have a law preventing people from doing this or that or the other, having some kind of regulation. So I think regulations are necessary. You can't just throw it all out the window. It's just like having any kind of laws. Suppose we take off the speed limit. I don't know whether I'd want to go back into town because you have people out there who would really test it. But right now, since you have a 55 limit out there, you're still going to have somebody who would abuse it, but not as many as if you just had unlimited. And so I think that's the way it is with just about every regulation. Fracking is one of the things that that we are dealing with right now. And nobody knows exactly all the details about how that's going to be done. But we need to be cautious, because if you don't make people be accountable for what's going on, it could be something that could be injurious to our health and environment down the road.
Speaker Tillis said that this budget this year, that regulation would be a huge part of this term in the legislature, looking at regulations and in many ways reducing regulations. What are some of the areas that you see that we're looking at that maybe there may be some concern if we reduce regulations in those areas? You mentioned speeding and that kind of thing, but again, back to business and jobs. Business, say sometimes we're over-regulated, so therefore they're afraid to move forward.
Well, what we're doing, time changes and situations change with time. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is just looking at all of the major regulations that we have. And we're looking at it, and when you find some things that will not make sense, period, and say we shouldn't have this anymore, we're wiping it off the books. That's what we're talking about. And I think that should be done in just about every office, every department or whatever, just looking at what you have and where you can eliminate some of them, go on and do that.
As we look at regulations, and you think about it from where you sit, and of course you've got a big window because you've been doing this a long time, those regulations that are there as boards throughout the state that look at, regulatory boards that look at different things, the content, member content, the folks that are on those boards are changing, and some gradually, some rapidly. But as those board members change, is that going to have a huge impact on what regulations are or how they're defined?
I think so, and one of the things that I always smile about when people talk about, is about having boards. When you have to have, you can't meet with 2 or 3 people, can't meet together unless you call it a board meeting, whatever. And then you think about text messaging and everything. You can sit in the same room and text people and exchange ideas, and nobody knows anything about it, really. So some of those things we're going to have to look at a lot differently than what we've been looking at in the past.
But significant changes probably are going to be coming the way through the legislature that's going to be impacting folks, and maybe in a positive and a negative way.
Yeah, that's true. I can't think of anything right offhand, but I do think you will see some of that going on. Especially when it comes to roads and the toll roads and things like that, giving people a chance to participate in making toll roads rather than the roads that we know them in the past.
Well, let's take another break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Dr. Larry Bell, State Representative, District 21 here. Stay with us as we look a little closer at some of the issues and some of the bills facing you this coming year. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We've had, seems like it's gone fast so far today. We're coming up on our last segment here with the We Should Know show. Tuesdays 2:30 to 3:30, 7 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Star Vision TV. We're talking with Representative Dr. Larry Bell, District 21. Dr. Bell, I mentioned coming on that you had a stellar background and career as a public servant. I don't know that I really know anybody that's served the public not only as long as you have, but in so many diverse positions. And as we look back at your function as a county commissioner, board of trustees at the community college, superintendent of the county schools. In fact, I think you did that a couple of times. You came back as an interim even with that. Came up through the school system and literally worked your way from the ground floor level all the way to the top. And we're looking at issues that are facing folks in North Carolina. And now as you sit in the legislature, state of North Carolina, do you ever sit in that office and just kind of look around and think, wow, look where I've been, look at where I am now. Do you ever get that feeling, I want to make more impact than I'm making, but you feel kind of boxed in?
Yeah, I do. And when it comes to education, I think I told some of them last week that I did not think that I would find people who were as negative towards some of the things in education as I have found. I guess it's when you're working in an area like that, you feel like everybody should think just like you do.
Yeah.
And I think that education is the key to almost everything that we do. When I look at the students that I've taught, some of them are doctors, lawyers, ministers, farmers, everything, all the way across the book, prisoners even.
Well, when we look at education, and again, we alluded a while ago, just looking at the categories of spending, education is in that category, K through 12, university system, community colleges, well over 50% of the budget of this $20+ billion budget we're looking at. So education is getting a chunk of that money. But another part of the budget that really is interesting, and folks I don't think that much about and should, I believe, is the Health and Human Services section. There's a bulk of the the Human Health Services funding is spending in North Carolina, and it includes a lot of programs for poor folks and Medicaid and health care. There's some concern in that even with some of the group homes and others, at one time we had to get some adjustments. What's going on there, and is Secretary Voss going to be able to have the funds that she needs to operate that? And I want to kind of dig into that a bit because I want to get your thoughts on some of the things that's happening with the mental health organizations throughout the state.
Yeah, that's going to be a real tough job for the Secretary. to get a handle on that, because it's kind of gotten out of hand over the years, and I deal with that, say, more in the Wayne County area than here, because of the hospitals we have there, the Cherry Hospital and all that, and we have a lot of agencies there, people who have set up their own companies to deal with healthcare issues, doing home care and all of that, and they are complaining all the time that sometimes they can't get paid. They don't think that a lot of people realize that some of these people don't have anywhere to go. If they turn them loose and stop providing the care for them at home, then they'll have to be institutionalized. And then you think about where they're going. There are not enough institutions to take care of all of them with people who there with the professional skills to deal with it. So it's a big problem, you know. And many homeless folk here in Sampson County, we because of the drug situation, basically, a lot of them are on drugs. And it's not really mental health things, issues that they had from birth, but some of them are on some of these drugs. The sheriff would get them. Somebody call and say they are having a problem. The first thing they do is take them to Goldsboro, and they have to stay there a few days, and they get okay, and they send them back. Takes away from the sheriff's transportation folk. He has signed somebody to do that kind of thing. And so it's a big problem. It's much bigger than what the average person would think about. And then if they don't get their medications, they are walking the streets, and it provides a problem for all of us. And the doctors and things are concerned that these people are not going to come in on their own and get their medication, you know, and they can't function without them. And so it's a big problem that we are going to have to face, and I don't know how you're going to overhaul it, but I hope that the Secretary will be successful in handling it. And there's a cost behind all of that.
Absolutely. Any thoughts? I know now in the state of North Carolina, you know, we used to have a local mental health department in each county, and of course, you know, that changed, and we went to these managed care organizations, or at the time we called LEOs, or local management entities. Is there a sense now with the 10 or 11 we've got in the state that they will be removed, and we will come more to a 2, 3, or even a statewide organization just managing health care as it relates to mental health and behavioral health issues?
I think there's always going to be a need for lower level departments dealing with some of these things. You might have to have one psychologist or somebody that may cover several areas and all, because I don't think we're going to have enough qualified personnel to deal with it as we had in the past, unless we start educating, as I said, back education again, more people into those areas and dealing with it in a more professional basis. So I just don't know how we're going to do it, and I think that if these folk can get near their families and in the communities, they seem to do better. But we got to educate our people that we do have people with mental health problems that may have to live in your communities or whatever, and program them, get them, acclimated to deal with those kind of situations.
It's like you said earlier, everything has a cost. No matter what, if government does it, there's a cost, and somebody has to levy that.
It comes out of that same pocket.
Another area of state government that's also being impacted, and I think one of the things that I hear happening is there's this sense of consolidation, and one of those areas is crime control and public safety. Secretary Shanahan's department, Highway Patrol, Crime Control and Public Safety, Emergency Management. There is a discussion, or at least conversation, I think, has been had related to moving the SBI over with Crime Control and Public Safety as one consolidation. And I did read that the Attorney General Cooper was opposed to that. Where do you stand on that consolidation, and would it be a huge savings for the state?
Well, I think where if the SBI and all should be in an area that will not be politicized too much. And so sometimes I think when it gets to the point where that it's like it's under a secretary or something like that, that it might get to the place that there might be some political pressures. I think it should be independent. Just think about some of the problems that, say, our past governor got into. We didn't need the governor's people, I would say, with the hand, that close into it. You understand what I'm saying? Because you can get out of hand. I think
object review versus subject.
Yeah, that's true. And I just think it should be as independent as possible.
We look at other areas, and of course, agriculture is big in your entire district. When you look at each one of the counties, what are some of the things that you see in agriculture that is a concern for you in the legislature that may need to be done, that we may need to rethink? We're looking at a $70+ billion industry.
Well, I had a call from Sampson County a few days ago with a farmer who was concerned about one of the places closing. I believe the House of Rayford, and they were wondering what they were going to do with the turkeys. They've been working turkey farms for years, and some of the other people were coming in, and they were starting new turkey houses. And then the ones who already had them, were wondering, what are we going to do with these? We've invested in it and everything, and so they were saying there should be a moratorium on turkey houses too. Let the ones that we have in place now stay on those farms and go with the farms, kind of like your hogs. Not be able to start new ones, because in the long run it would be more economical for everybody if you can put a limit on how many you can have, rather than allowing everybody to come in and just build some more. Because we got to protect those farmers who have already made investments, because some of them will stand to lose their farms if we don't do something, So we're working on that. I immediately jumped on that and got the Agriculture Committee to work on it, and also the Secretary of Agriculture to start looking into what we can do to protect these turkey farmers.
I'd be amiss, and I'd get some calls if I don't quickly ask you this question as well. The recent buyout of Smithfield Foods from a company based in China. What's your thoughts on that? Good, bad?
Well, I'm thinking about it.
You're still processing it.
Still processing it. I got a call the day before telling me about it, and I was really surprised to hear it. But look at it from one perspective. If we're going to try to provide food for everybody, there are more people there than anywhere I know in the world. So we got a market there. So that will be a long-standing one.
Absolutely.
But I just don't want them to regulate us. We need to regulate what happens here in America, and set the background for all of it.
About a 15-second wrap-up.
Well, as always, I appreciate you all allowing me to serve you as long as I can, and as long as I feel like I can be helpful, I will. But this is my 13th year. Got one more year to go, and I'm enjoying it, really.
Dr. Bell, thank you for being with us. It's our pleasure to have a good friend, Dr. Larry Bell, representative here in North Carolina, has been with us today. We will see you again next week on the radio.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question or comment regarding this or any episode, please send your email questions and or comments to jwsimmonsedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday afternoon beginning at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.